Discover the art of strategic relationships with Enlight Audiobook, where meaningful connections become a catalyst for extraordinary growth. A powerful life rarely unfolds in isolation. Behind many breakthroughs stands a person who opened a door, offered perspective, or simply believed at the right moment. Introduction. Opportunities seldom arrive wearing the label opportunity. More often, they travel through conversations, introductions, recommendations, mentorship, collaboration, encouragement, and trust. A single relationship can bring knowledge you could not acquire alone, a mentor who helps you see farther, or a connection that changes the trajectory of your career and life. Yet, building valuable relationships is not merely about collecting contacts or expanding a social circle. Strategic relationships go deeper. They are built with intention, discernment, authenticity, and a genuine desire to create mutual value. Being strategic does not mean being manipulative. It means understanding whom you connect with, why the connection matters, how you can contribute, and when to nurture it. It means showing up thoughtfully, communicating with clarity, following through on promises, and cultivating trust over time. The chapters ahead will take you beyond superficial networking and into the subtle architecture of meaningful human connection, how to initiate relationships, communicate intelligently, earn trust, navigate differences, and turn connections into lasting partnerships. Because the right relationship does more than open a door, it can change what you believe is possible. And every transformative relationship begins with one deliberate step: knowing how to connect. Chapter 1. Stop collecting contacts, start creating connections. A phone can hold 5,000 names and still leave you with no one to call when life becomes difficult. That is the strange paradox of modern networking. We have never been more connected, and yet many people have never felt more disconnected. We count followers, celebrate LinkedIn connections, exchange business cards, collect phone numbers, and measure social reach as though human connection were a scoreboard. But a number beside someone's name does not tell you whether that person trusts you, respects you, remembers you, or would stand beside you when it matters. A contact is not a connection. A connection is not a relationship. And a relationship is not automatically an opportunity. A contact is simply someone whose details you possess. You may have exchanged a number, accepted a request, or met briefly. An acquaintance is someone you recognize and know at a basic level, but whose world remains largely unfamiliar to you. A connection begins when conversation creates recognition. You know something about the person beyond their name, position, or profile picture. A relationship develops when repeated interaction creates familiarity, trust, and mutual understanding. A strategic relationship goes further. It is an intentional, authentic relationship in which both people contribute value, learn from one another, and create possibilities neither could easily create alone. Strategic does not mean calculating every interaction. It means being purposeful without becoming artificial. Consider Warren Buffett early in his career. As a young investor, Buffett was fascinated by the ideas of Benjamin Graham, whose approach to investing profoundly influenced him. Buffett eventually studied under Graham at Columbia Business School and later worked for Graham's investment firm. What began as admiration for an influential thinker became mentorship, professional experience, and a relationship that helped shape Buffett's investment philosophy. Buffett did not simply collect Graham as a prestigious contact. He learned from him, worked alongside him, absorbed his principles, and carried those lessons forward. The lesson is bigger than investing. Sometimes the person who changes your future first changes the way you think. Superficial networking fails because people are remarkably perceptive. They can often detect when someone is waiting for their turn to speak, scanning the room for someone more influential, or calculating what they can extract from an interaction. When every conversation begins with, "What can this person do for me?" the relationship quietly becomes a transaction. Genuine connection begins with a different question. What can I understand, contribute, or create with this person? That shift changes everything. Start with curiosity. Ask questions that reveal the person behind the resume. Listen not merely to respond, but to understand. Notice what excites them, what challenges them, and what they are trying to build. Then develop trust. Trust is rarely created through grand gestures. It is built through small acts repeated consistently. Keeping your word, responding when you said you would, respecting confidentiality, acknowledging mistakes, and showing up when there is nothing immediate to gain. Practice reciprocity. Give information, encouragement, introductions, ideas, attention, or support without keeping an invisible ledger. Healthy relationships are not perfectly equal at every moment. They are mutually valuable over time. Protect authenticity. You do not need to impress everyone. You need to become someone people can believe. And above all, embrace consistency. One memorable conversation may open a door, but repeated meaningful interaction is what keeps it open. Think of relationship building as a 6-stage progression. Contact to conversation, to connection, to trust, to relationship, to opportunity. A contact gives you access. A conversation creates familiarity. A connection creates recognition. Trust creates confidence. A relationship creates continuity. And opportunity emerges naturally from the value developed along the way. Notice the final stage. Opportunity is not the starting objective. It is often the consequence. This is where many people get the sequence backward. They chase opportunities before building the relationships capable of sustaining them. They ask for favors before earning confidence. They request introductions before becoming someone worth introducing. But meaningful relationships compound. A thoughtful conversation today may become a collaboration 3 years from now. A recommendation you make without expecting anything back may return as an unexpected introduction. A mentor's advice may quietly influence a decision you make decades later. The strongest networks are not built by reaching more people. They are built by becoming more valuable to the people you genuinely connect with. So stop asking how many people know your name. Ask instead, who knows your character? Who trusts your word? Who understands your strengths? And whose life has become better because you were part of it? Those questions move you from networking to relationship building, from collecting contacts to creating connections. But meaningful relationships cannot be built around an empty center. Before you can offer genuine value to others, you must first understand something fundamental. What exactly do you bring to the relationship? Chapter 2. Know your value before you enter the room. Walk into a room asking, "What can this person do for me?" and you have already reduced a human being to a potential transaction. Walk in asking, "What can I contribute here?" and something changes. You become attentive rather than anxious, useful rather than performative, curious rather than calculating. You stop scanning the room for status and start looking for ways to create value. That shift begins with self-awareness. Before you can build strategic relationships, you need to understand what you actually bring to them, not what you wish you had, not what looks impressive on a resume, not what sounds powerful when introduced at a dinner table. What is genuinely yours to give? Your value may begin with your strengths. Perhaps you solve problems quickly, communicate clearly, organize chaos, or see patterns others overlook. It may come from skills developed through years of practice. Your knowledge can help someone avoid a mistake. Your experience can provide perspective when another person is facing a challenge you have already navigated. But relational value extends far beyond professional ability. Your values influence whether people can rely on your judgment. Your emotional maturity determines how you respond when conversations become uncomfortable. Your curiosity makes people feel heard rather than examined. Your reliability transforms promises into evidence. Your character becomes the invisible foundation beneath everything else. Even your reputation matters, not as a popularity score, but as the expectation people carry when your name enters a conversation. Consider Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft. When he became CEO in 2014, he inherited a technology giant with enormous resources, but also significant internal friction. Rather than relying solely on authority or attempting to prove that he was the smartest person in the room, Nadella emphasized empathy, learning, collaboration, and a growth mindset. He encouraged people to move away from a culture of knowing everything toward one of learning everything. That approach mattered because leadership is relational. Nadella's technical background gave him competence, but his emphasis on empathy and learning helped him reshape how people worked together. His contribution was not simply a collection of executive skills, it was a way of influencing the environment around him. The broader lesson is powerful. Competence may earn attention, but character determines what people are willing to build with you. You do not need wealth to create value. You can offer an introduction to someone who needs the right connection. You can share information that saves another person hours of unnecessary effort. You can encourage someone when their confidence is collapsing. You can bring a calm perspective into a difficult conversation. You can remember what someone told you months ago and ask how it turned out. Sometimes the most valuable person in the room is not the loudest or most accomplished. It is the person who can be counted on. Think of this as relational currency, the qualities, knowledge, behaviors, and contributions that make people willing to invest trust in you. Money can purchase access, but relational currency earns confidence. A prestigious title may get you introduced. Expertise may make people listen, but reliability makes them return. Curiosity makes them open up. Generosity makes them remember you. Character makes them trust you when circumstances become uncertain. And this is why genuine confidence is different from self-promotion. Confidence says, I know what I can contribute. Arrogance says, I need everyone to know how important I am. The first creates stability. The second creates resistance. You do not need to walk into every room determined to prove your worth. You need enough self-knowledge to recognize it and enough humility to use it in service of something larger than yourself. Ask yourself, what problems can I solve? What do people naturally come to me for? What have I learned through experience that could help someone else? What qualities make people feel safe around me? What promises can I consistently keep? What perspective can I offer that others may not see? These questions are not exercises in ego, they are exercises in preparation. When you understand your strengths, you stop trying to imitate everyone else. When you understand your limitations, you know where collaboration becomes necessary. When you recognize your values, you become more selective about the relationships you build. You do not need to become impressive to everyone. You need to become genuinely valuable to the people and communities you hope to serve. That is a quieter ambition, but a far more durable one, because once you know what you bring to the table, you no longer need to chase every table. You can choose the right ones. And that raises the next question: who deserves a place in your circle, and how intentionally should you choose them? Chapter 3. Build a circle that expands your world. Your world is partly shaped by the conversations you hear repeatedly. Stay in the same room long enough and its walls begin to look like the boundaries of reality. The same assumptions circulate, the same opinions get reinforced, the same ambitions appear reasonable, and everything beyond them starts to feel unrealistic. But sometimes one person walks into your life and quietly moves a wall. They introduce you to an unfamiliar idea, a different profession, a new culture, a possibility you had never considered. Suddenly, the world becomes larger, not because the world changed, but because your map of it did. This is why building your circle requires discernment. A meaningful circle is not simply a collection of people you enjoy, it is an ecosystem of influence. Different people can play profoundly different roles in your development. A mentor helps you see farther because they have traveled a road you are still approaching. A peer walks beside you, sharing challenges, discoveries, and momentum. A friend gives you belonging without requiring performance. A collaborator combines your strengths with theirs to create something neither could easily produce alone. A challenger questions your assumptions and forces you to sharpen your thinking. A teacher expands your knowledge. A sponsor may use their credibility, influence, or position to advocate for your opportunities. An encourager reminds you of your capacity when temporary failure makes you forget it. And a connector introduces you to people, communities, and rooms you might never have entered alone. Notice something important. Not all of these people need to be more successful than you. Sometimes the person who expands your world has less money, fewer credentials, or a completely different career. Their value may lie in perspective rather than prestige. The goal is not to surround yourself with impressive people. The goal is to surround yourself with people who make your thinking more expansive, your character stronger, and your possibilities wider. Consider Steve Jobs and the period when he explored disciplines far beyond conventional computer engineering. His exposure to calligraphy at Reed College became especially influential in shaping his appreciation for typography and design. He later connected that aesthetic sensibility with technology, contributing to the Macintosh's distinctive typography and visual presentation. The influence did not come from another computer programmer teaching him a new technical trick. It came from an apparently unrelated field, changing how he perceived technology itself. That story illustrates a principle worth remembering. The ideas that transform your field may come from outside your field. This is the essence of circle expansion, deliberately building relationships that expose you to ideas, disciplines, experiences, cultures, and possibilities beyond your existing environment. If everyone around you thinks exactly as you do, agrees with your assumptions, shares your ambitions, and interprets the world through the same lens, comfort may increase, but intellectual growth can quietly decline. An echo chamber does not feel dangerous while you are inside it. It feels like certainty. That is why diversity of thought matters. Seek people with different experiences, expertise, generations, cultures, personalities, and approaches to solving problems. You do not need to agree with them. In fact, disagreement can be one of the most valuable forms of intellectual nourishment when it is handled with respect. But choose carefully. A person who challenges you should make you think harder, not feel smaller. A person who supports you should help you move forward, not remain comfortable. A person who inspires you should awaken possibility, not insecurity. And a person who tells you the truth should do so with the intention of strengthening you, not humiliating you. These distinctions matter. Growth does not require abandoning old friends because they earn less, know less, or live differently. Gratitude matters. History matters. Loyalty matters. Some of the people who knew you before anyone else cared about your ambitions may remain among your most valuable relationships, but loyalty should not become a prison. You can appreciate where you came from while expanding where you are going. Set boundaries where necessary. Step back from relationships that consistently diminish your confidence, sabotage your progress, or normalize behavior that conflicts with your values. At the same time, resist the temptation to judge people solely by achievement. A humble friend with extraordinary integrity may teach you more about life than a celebrated executive ever could. Your circle should not become a hierarchy. It should become a constellation. Each person contributes a different light, perspective, lesson, or direction. So examine your environment. Who challenges your thinking? Who expands your imagination? Who tells you the truth? Who celebrates your progress without competing with it? Who encourages you to rise without making you ashamed of where you began? These questions reveal the architecture of your relational world, and once you deliberately choose an environment that expands you, another responsibility emerges. You must become the kind of person worth remembering within it. Because entering the right room is only the beginning. The next chapter is about becoming someone people naturally want to know, trust, and keep in their lives. Chapter 4. Become the person. People. Remember. Sometimes your reputation arrives before you do. A manager hears your name before you enter the meeting. A colleague remembers how you handled pressure months ago. A friend tells someone, "You should talk to her. She always follows through." Long before you introduce yourself, other people's experiences may already have written the first paragraph of your story. That is the quiet power of reputation. Yet many people try to become memorable by becoming impressive. They speak louder, display achievements, dominate conversations, or carefully construct an image. But attention is easy to attract and surprisingly difficult to convert into trust. Being impressive may make people notice you. Being trustworthy gives them a reason to remember you. This is where relational reputation becomes important. Relational reputation is the accumulated impression people form from the way you behave around them, especially when there is nothing obvious to gain. It is not a slogan you create about yourself. It is the conclusion other people gradually reach after watching your patterns. And patterns are built from small moments. You arrive when you said you would. You return the message you promised to answer. You give credit when someone else contributed. You admit when you were wrong. You listen without constantly preparing your response. You help without turning every favor into a future debt. None of these actions seems extraordinary. Together, they become extraordinary evidence. Consider a university student named Daniel, who joined a small research project with several classmates. He was not the most academically accomplished person in the group, nor the most outspoken. During the first meeting, however, he volunteered to organize the shared research materials and send everyone a concise summary afterward. He did exactly that. At the next meeting, he noticed one teammate had missed an important source and quietly sent it to her. Later, when the group faced a deadline, Daniel stayed late to help clean up the presentation, not because he wanted recognition, but because the team needed it. Months later, another student was looking for someone reliable to assist with a much larger project. One of Daniel's teammates recommended him immediately. Why? Not because Daniel had delivered a dramatic speech about his abilities. He had accumulated evidence. His reputation had been built quietly, one kept promise at a time. This is how relational reputation works. People remember patterns more than performances. Integrity tells people that your private behavior is consistent with your public claims. Reliability tells them that your words can be converted into expectations. Competence assures them that you can actually contribute. Generosity demonstrates that your value does not depend on constant recognition. Emotional intelligence helps you read the room without becoming a slave to it. Curiosity makes people feel that their experiences matter. Confidence allows you to contribute without shrinking yourself, and humility keeps that confidence from becoming arrogance. Consistency ties everything together. A reputation is not built in a single impressive moment. It is built in hundreds of ordinary moments that nobody thought were important. This does not mean you should perform kindness, manufacture enthusiasm, or carefully calculate every interaction. People can sense rehearsed sincerity. The goal is not to appear trustworthy. The goal is to become trustworthy. There is an important distinction. If you try to impress people, your attention remains fixed on how you are being perceived. You monitor your words, measure reactions, and search for approval. If you focus on being useful, respectful, prepared, and genuine, your attention shifts outward. You begin asking better questions. You listen more carefully. You notice what others need. You follow through. And paradoxically, that is often what makes you memorable. You do not need a magnetic personality to leave a strong impression. Sometimes a calm presence, thoughtful question, accurate information, or sincere encouragement is enough. Remember someone's name. Keep the commitment you made. Give credit generously. Own mistakes quickly. Send the useful article. Make the introduction. Check in when you said you would. Small acts are the handwriting of character. Over time, people begin to associate your name with something dependable. She is thoughtful. He gets things done. You can trust her. He listens. She brings clarity. That is relational reputation. And it creates something more valuable than popularity, confidence in your presence. So stop asking, how can I make people remember me? Ask a better question. What would I want people to remember about the experience of dealing with me? That question changes your behavior from performance to contribution, because the most powerful impression is rarely, what an impressive person. It is, I would trust this person again. Yet even the strongest reputation has a limitation. Being memorable may get someone's attention, but attention alone does not create closeness. Something else must happen after the first impression. You must know how to communicate in a way that turns attention into genuine connection. Chapter 5. Master the conversation before you. Master the connection. A conversation can last 10 minutes and change the way two people see each other, or last an hour and leave behind almost nothing. The difference is rarely vocabulary. It is attention. We often think communication is about finding the right words, sounding intelligent, telling compelling stories, or making a strong impression. But meaningful conversation is less about occupying the air and more about creating space. The best conversationalists do not simply make themselves interesting, they make other people feel interesting. That begins with asking better questions. Instead of predictable questions that invite predictable answers, ask questions that open doors. What do you do? May produce a job title. What part of your work do you enjoy most? Reveals motivation. How did you get into that? Uncovers a story. What are you working toward now? Reveals ambition. A good question does not interrogate, it invites. Then comes the skill most people underestimate: listening. Listening is not waiting silently until you can speak again. It is paying enough attention to understand what someone is actually saying, and sometimes what they are struggling to say. Notice their energy. Notice when their voice becomes animated. Notice what subjects they return to. Notice the hesitation before certain answers. Emotional cues often communicate what words leave unsaid. This leads to a simple framework. Ask, arrow, listen, arrow, notice, arrow, respond, arrow, remember. Ask questions that encourage substance rather than surface-level answers. Listen without mentally drafting your next impressive statement. Notice emotional signals, interests, concerns, values, and moments of enthusiasm. Respond to what the person actually gave you instead of redirecting the conversation back to yourself. Remember meaningful details so the next conversation begins deeper than the last. Consider two people meeting at a professional event. The first conversation sounds familiar. What do you do? I work in marketing. Interesting. I run a startup. Oh, that's great. We're actually looking for marketing partners. The speaker immediately launches into a description of the company, its growth, its achievements, and its plans. By the end, both exchange contact information. Technically, networking happened, but connection did not necessarily happen. Now imagine a different exchange. What brought you into marketing? I originally studied literature, actually. I became fascinated by how stories influence what people choose. That is interesting. Do you still use that background in your work? All the time, especially when we're building campaigns. So storytelling is really the bridge between what you studied and what you do now. Yes, exactly. The conversation has changed. The second person did not rush to establish status. They followed curiosity. They noticed a meaningful detail and built the next question around it. Conversation deepens when curiosity follows the thread instead of changing the subject. This does not mean you should interrogate people with endless questions. Good conversation requires reciprocity. Share your own experiences, tell stories, offer opinions, reveal something authentic about yourself. The goal is not to become an interviewer. It is to create a rhythm in which both people can contribute. Finding common ground helps, but common ground does not always mean identical interests. You may share a passion for entrepreneurship, a hometown, a frustration with bureaucracy, an appreciation for music, or simply the experience of learning something difficult. Look for bridges, not mirrors, and resist unnecessary self-promotion. There is nothing wrong with discussing your achievements when relevant. But when every subject becomes an opportunity to advertise yourself, conversation starts feeling like a presentation. A conversation is not a stage where two people compete for the spotlight. It is a space where understanding can take shape. Clarity matters too. Avoid burying simple ideas beneath complicated language. Speak with enough precision that people understand what you mean, and enough warmth that they want to continue the conversation. Remember details. If someone mentions that their daughter has an important examination, ask about it later. If a colleague tells you they are launching a project next month, follow up. If someone shares a challenge, do not forget it the moment the conversation ends. Memory communicates significance. When you remember something small that mattered to another person, you are silently saying, "You mattered enough for me to remember." That is powerful. The deepest conversational skill, therefore, is not eloquence, it is presence. Put down the invisible script. Stop preparing your next response while someone is speaking. Slow down. Ask one more thoughtful question. Let silence breathe when necessary. Pick up on what matters to the other person and build from there. Because people rarely remember every sentence you said. They remember how understood they felt while saying theirs. And that is why conversation is not merely the doorway to connection, it is the structure that keeps connection alive. The quality of a relationship is often determined by the quality of the conversations that sustain it. Chapter 6. Give first, ask later. There is a subtle difference between a person who enters a relationship carrying an open hand and one who enters carrying an invisible invoice. Both may offer something. Only one is truly giving. Much of modern relationship building is shaped by an unspoken calculation. If I help this person, what will I get back? If I introduce them to someone, what can they do for me? If I share this information, will they remember me when an opportunity appears? The calculation may be understandable, but it creates fragile relationships. A stronger approach begins with a different philosophy. Give value before you ask for value. Call this the value-first mindset. It means entering relationships looking for meaningful ways to contribute rather than immediately searching for personal gain. You may share useful information, make an introduction, offer thoughtful feedback, encourage someone through a difficult moment. explain something you know, or simply give another person your undivided attention. None of these actions requires wealth or authority. They require awareness. A student who shares useful study resources with a struggling classmate is creating value. An employee who helps a new colleague understand an unfamiliar system is creating value. An entrepreneur who introduces two people whose skills complement each other is creating value. A friend who listens carefully when someone is having a difficult day is creating value. Value is not always something you can put on a resume. Sometimes it is something another person can feel. Consider a young entrepreneur attending an industry event. Instead of immediately pitching her startup to every person she meets, she asks people what they are working on. She discovers that one designer is searching for a technical partner, while someone else she knows has exactly the skills he needs. She makes the introduction without asking for anything. Months later, that designer encounters a problem related to her own business and remembers the person who helped him when there was nothing to gain. The introduction did not guarantee anything. That is precisely why it mattered. Generosity creates trust when it is free from hidden conditions. But this is where an important distinction must be made. Generosity is not people-pleasing. People-pleasing says, "I must give so that you will approve of me." The value-first mindset says, "I choose to contribute because contribution reflects who I want to be." The difference is enormous. A people-pleaser struggles to say no, gives beyond their capacity, suppresses honest opinions, and quietly hopes that sacrifice will purchase acceptance. Eventually, resentment appears because the supposed gift was actually an unspoken bargain. Healthy generosity has boundaries. You can help without rescuing. You can encourage without carrying someone else's responsibilities. You can introduce people without becoming responsible for the outcome. You can share your expertise without giving away everything you have built. You can care about someone without abandoning yourself. A boundary does not make generosity smaller. It makes generosity sustainable. The goal is not to become the person who is always available. It is to become the person whose contribution is thoughtful and dependable. Look for opportunities to give in ordinary moments. Send the article that solves a problem someone mentioned last week. Share information before being asked. Offer constructive feedback when it can genuinely help. Celebrate another person's progress without turning it into a comparison. Make an introduction when two people could benefit from knowing each other. Give someone your full attention instead of half listening while checking your phone. Remember an important milestone and acknowledge it. Sometimes the most valuable gift is simply saying, "I thought of you when I saw this." These small gestures accumulate. A single act of generosity may be forgotten. A pattern of generosity becomes part of your character, and yet giving first should never become a strategy for controlling outcomes. If you give someone advice only because you expect a future favor, you are not really giving, you are investing with undisclosed terms. Real generosity releases the receipt. You contribute because the contribution itself has value. Ironically, this often strengthens relationships more effectively than calculated networking ever could. People become more comfortable around those who are not constantly extracting. They begin to associate your presence with usefulness, goodwill, and trust. Reciprocity then develops naturally, not necessarily immediately, not necessarily equally. Relationships rarely operate like perfectly balanced spreadsheets. One season, you may be the person giving more. In another, someone else may carry you. That is the beauty of genuine relationships. Value moves, information moves, encouragement moves, opportunities move, wisdom moves, support moves, and as it moves, the relationship becomes stronger. So before your next conversation, meeting, introduction, or message, pause and ask yourself, what can I contribute here? Not because you should make yourself useful to everyone, not because you must earn affection, not because every act of generosity will eventually be rewarded, but because the quality of your relationships is deeply influenced by the value you consistently bring into them. Anyone can ask, "What can I get?" Strategic relationship builders learn to ask something more powerful. What can I contribute? And once you learn to give value sincerely, the next challenge is learning how to protect the trust that generosity helps create. Chapter 7. Turn trust into opportunity. The most valuable doors in life rarely have handles on the outside. You cannot force them open with confidence, credentials, or clever persuasion. Often they open from within when someone who trusts you decides to make room for you. That is the difference between access and opportunity. Access can be purchased, requested, or occasionally stumbled upon. Opportunity is different. It is often created when trust, competence, timing, and mutual value converge. This is why the principle of trust before transaction matters. A genuine relationship should never be a disguise for an agenda. You should not pretend to care about someone simply because they occupy a position that could benefit you. People eventually sense the performance. But when authentic relationships develop, opportunities can emerge naturally. A mentor may recommend you for a position. A colleague may invite you into a project. A former classmate may introduce you to a founder. A friend may point you toward a course, investor, client, or community that changes your direction. The opportunity is not the relationship's purpose. It is often the relationship's consequence. Consider a young designer named Maya who joined a small creative agency early in her career. She developed a good relationship with a senior strategist, not by constantly asking for favors, but by being curious, dependable, and willing to learn. She asked thoughtful questions after meetings, helped refine presentations, and occasionally shared research that made the team's work stronger. Months passed. One afternoon, the strategist mentioned that a major client was searching for someone who understood both visual design and audience psychology. Maya happened to have developed exactly that combination through her independent study. The strategist recommended her. Maya had never asked, "Can you get me this client?" She had simply become someone worth recommending. That distinction is crucial. People rarely risk their reputation on behalf of someone they barely trust. If you want relationships to create opportunity, first become capable of carrying the opportunity. This means communicating your goals clearly. You do not have to hide your ambitions to appear humble. If someone understands what you are trying to build, they can recognize where their knowledge, network, or experience might intersect with your direction. There is a difference between saying, "Can you get me a job?" and "I'm working toward a role in product strategy. I've been developing my research and analytical skills, and I'd value your perspective on what I should strengthen next." The first places pressure on the relationship. The second opens a conversation. Ask for guidance before asking for access. When you do need help, make your request intelligent. Be specific. Explain what you have already done. Show that you respect the other person's time. Give them enough context to understand why you are asking them specifically. And when someone helps you, follow up. Tell them what happened. Thank them. Let them know their advice mattered. Few things strengthen trust more than seeing that your contribution actually made a difference. The same principle applies when making introductions. Never casually connect two people and disappear. Explain why the connection may be valuable to both. Give each person context. Respect their autonomy. Good introductions create bridges. Careless introductions create noise. When presenting an idea, look beyond what you want and identify the mutual benefit. Ask, what problem does this solve? What does the other person gain? Why might this matter to them? That is how a request becomes an opportunity. Of course, not every door will open. Someone may decline your proposal. A mentor may be too busy. A company may reject your application. A potential collaborator may choose another direction. Handle rejection with grace. Do not punish people for saying no. Do not become cold because someone could not help you. And never confuse a closed door with a damaged relationship. Sometimes the most strategic response to rejection is simply, "Thank you for considering it. I appreciate your honesty." Then move forward. Your professionalism in disappointment becomes part of your reputation. This is where many people misunderstand strategic relationships. They imagine opportunity as a prize hidden behind the right connections. But opportunity is better understood as alignment. Your capability meets someone's need. Your knowledge meets someone's problem. Your network meets another person's network. Your idea meets the right moment. Your character gives someone enough confidence to say, "I think you two should meet." That is a win-win opportunity. And win-win relationships are sustainable because neither person has to lose for the other to gain. So build trust before you need it. Communicate your direction before you need an introduction. Contribute before you ask for support. Follow up after receiving help. Make your value visible without turning yourself into an advertisement. And when opportunity appears, step forward, prepared. Because the strongest relationships do not create shortcuts around competence. They create pathways through which competence can finally be seen. The world is full of doors. Some will remain closed no matter how hard you knock. Others will open because someone inside has come to trust your character, your ability, and your intentions. The strongest doors are rarely forced open, they are opened by trust. Chapter 8. Read the room. Read the relationship. A perfectly reasonable sentence can become the wrong sentence simply because it arrives at the wrong moment. Imagine telling a joke during a celebration and telling the same joke moments after someone has received bad news. The words have not changed, the meaning has. That is the hidden complexity of human interaction. Strategic communication is not merely knowing what to say, it is understanding when, where, how, and to whom to say it. This ability is often called social intelligence, but it is less mysterious than it sounds. It is the capacity to notice what is happening around you before deciding how to step into it. Start with context. A message that works in a private conversation may fail spectacularly in a group meeting. Honest criticism may be useful one-on-one, but humiliating when delivered publicly. A casual suggestion over coffee may be welcome. The same suggestion during a crisis meeting may feel insensitive. Then consider timing. Someone can be interested in your idea and still be unable to engage with it at that moment. Someone can respect you and still need space. Someone can want to help but be overwhelmed by competing responsibilities. This is relational timing, the ability to recognize not only what should be communicated, but the moment, setting, tone, and emotional conditions in which the message is most likely to be received well. Consider a workplace example. A new employee, Arif, noticed that his team's weekly meetings were becoming inefficient. Several people repeatedly raised the same operational problem, and Arif had an idea that could save considerable time. During one meeting, however, he noticed his manager was visibly tense after receiving difficult news from a major client. Arif could have interrupted with his proposal. Instead, he waited. After the meeting, he approached his manager privately and said, "I noticed today was difficult. I have an idea that might simplify one of the issues we discussed. Would tomorrow be a better time to walk you through it?" That small adjustment changed the entire interaction. The idea was the same. The timing was different. His manager later told him that what stood out was not merely the proposal, but his awareness of the situation. Social intelligence often begins where self-absorption ends. Read emotional signals without pretending you can read minds. Look for enthusiasm, hesitation, distraction, discomfort, openness, or withdrawal. If someone's answers become shorter, their attention repeatedly shifts away, or their body language closes off, do not automatically push harder. Sometimes the wisest response is to ease up. Boundaries matter here. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every personal question deserves an answer. Not every relationship requires immediate intimacy. Respecting someone's pace is a form of respect. Power dynamics also deserve attention. A conversation between close friends is different from one between an intern and a senior executive. In unequal situations, people may hesitate to disagree openly. A socially intelligent person creates room for honest participation rather than exploiting the imbalance. Cultural differences add another layer. Eye contact, physical distance, humor, directness, interruptions, silence, and expressions of disagreement can carry different meanings across cultures. What feels confident in one environment may feel aggressive in another. Adapting to these differences does not make you fake. Adaptation is not inauthenticity, it is consideration. You remain yourself while becoming more attentive to the environment you are entering. This is especially useful if you are introverted or socially uncertain. You do not need to dominate a room to understand it. Before entering a conversation, observe. Who seems engaged? Who appears uncomfortable? What is the emotional temperature? Is this a serious moment or a relaxed one? Is the group looking for ideas, decisions, reassurance, or simply information? You can participate without performing. Ask one thoughtful question. Listen before jumping in. Let someone finish. If you are unsure whether a subject is appropriate, test the waters gently rather than charging ahead. And remember, social intelligence is not about perfectly decoding every person. Nobody can do that. It is about remaining observant enough to notice when your assumptions may be wrong. Sometimes you will misread a situation. When that happens, adjust. Apologize if necessary. Clarify. Move on. The ability to recalibrate is often more valuable than the ability to appear flawless. Think of every interaction as having an invisible atmosphere. Some rooms are open and energetic. Others are cautious. Some relationships are ready for deeper conversation. Others are still establishing trust. You cannot control every atmosphere, but you can learn to enter it respectfully. The strongest communicators do not force their message into every room. They first understand the room, then find the right way to contribute. Because ultimately, social intelligence is not about controlling a room. It is about understanding it well enough to know when to speak, when to listen, when to step forward, and when to give someone else the space to be heard. Chapter 9. Build relationships that outlast opportunities. An opportunity may introduce two people. Time reveals whether they become important to each other. This is where many relationships quietly disappear. The project ends, the conference is over, the interview is finished, the favor has been returned, the useful introduction has been made. Messages become less frequent, names disappear beneath newer conversations, and a relationship that once seemed promising gradually becomes a forgotten thread. But relationships were never meant to survive only while they are useful. The real test of connection begins after usefulness ends. Creating a relationship is an event. Maintaining one is a practice. Trust becomes durable through repetition. The message sent without an agenda, the promise kept when nobody is watching, the birthday remembered, the difficult conversation handled with maturity, the unexpected, "How are you doing?" that arrives when nothing is being requested. This is why relationship maintenance requires something deeper than networking skill. It requires regard. Consider a former colleague who moves to another country. You may no longer share an office, projects, or professional interests, yet every few months you check in. You remember that she wanted to pursue a new field. You ask how the transition is going. When she succeeds, you celebrate without turning her achievement into a comparison with your own life. Nothing is being exchanged, and that is precisely what gives the relationship meaning. A useful framework for sustaining meaningful relationships is CARE. C. Check in. A. Add value. R. Remember. E. Encourage. These 4 actions sound simple, but their power lies in sincerity. Check in because people are more than the moments when they are useful to you. You do not need elaborate messages. Sometimes a sentence is enough. You crossed my mind today. How are things going? The important part is that the question is genuine. Add value by paying attention to what the other person actually needs. Perhaps you come across an article relevant to their work. Maybe you know someone they should meet. Perhaps you can offer a perspective on a problem they mentioned months ago. Value does not always arrive as advice. Sometimes it arrives as attention. Remember the details people entrust to you. If someone told you they were nervous about an important presentation, ask how it went. If a friend was preparing for a major transition, follow up later. If a colleague mentioned a personal milestone, acknowledge it. Remembering communicates something profound. Your life did not disappear from my mind when our conversation ended. And then there is encouragement, not empty praise, not exaggerated compliments. Real encouragement recognizes effort, progress, resilience, and possibility. Tell someone when their work has improved. Remind a friend of their strength when they temporarily lose sight of it. Celebrate another person's success without needing to place your own beside it. These gestures may seem small, but relationships are often held together by precisely such small things. Convenience-based relationships operate differently. They remain active while there is mutual utility. When the benefit disappears, the interaction fades. Genuine relationships possess a different architecture. They are not built around constant exchange. They are built around lasting regard. That does not mean every relationship should remain unchanged forever. People grow. Priorities shift. Geography separates us. Values evolve. Some relationships become quieter without becoming bitter. Others naturally reach their conclusion, and some relationships must be released. If someone repeatedly manipulates you, violates your boundaries, undermines your dignity, or consistently pulls you toward behavior that conflicts with your values, maintaining the relationship is not loyalty. It is self-abandonment. Healthy relationship building includes knowing when to step back. You can forgive someone without giving them unlimited access to you. You can appreciate a relationship's history without pretending its present condition is healthy. You can wish someone well and still choose distance. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Every relationship is meant to teach you something about connection, boundaries, trust, or yourself. This emotional maturity prevents 2 opposite mistakes: holding on to relationships that continually damage you and discarding meaningful relationships simply because they no longer provide immediate benefits. Do not measure every connection by frequency. Some people speak every day and barely know each other. Others may go months without speaking and reconnect with remarkable ease. Distance does not always destroy connection. Neglect does, and repair matters too. Misunderstandings happen, messages are misread, expectations collide, people disappoint one another. The mature response is not always to walk away. Sometimes it is to talk. Say what happened without exaggeration. Listen without preparing a defense. Acknowledge your part. Clarify what you meant. Apologize when necessary. A relationship becomes stronger not because it never experiences friction, but because both people learn how to move through it. So maintain the people who matter. Check in. Add value. Remember, encourage, keep your promises, respect boundaries, celebrate without competing, support without keeping score. And when a relationship changes, allow it to change with dignity. Because the deepest relationships are not sustained by constant usefulness. They are sustained by the quiet knowledge that even when there is no opportunity, no favor, no introduction, no advantage, and no transaction waiting on the other side, you still care. That may be the greatest measure of all. A relationship reveals its true worth, not by what it gives you when you need something, but by what remains between 2 people when there is nothing to gain. Conclusion: your future is connected. Your future may feel like something you build alone, one decision, one achievement, one difficult step at a time. But look more closely. Behind many turning points in a life is another human being, a teacher who gave you confidence, a friend who stayed when things became difficult, a mentor who challenged your thinking, a stranger who offered an introduction, a colleague who trusted your ability before you fully trusted it yourself. Our lives are individual, but they are not isolated. That is the truth at the heart of strategic relationships. Networking counts contacts, connection creates meaning, attention can make you visible, trust makes you valuable, contacts expand a list, relationships expand a life. Taking asks, what can I get? Contributing asks, what can I bring? And opportunity becomes most powerful when it is no longer something you extract from people, but something you create together. Strategic relationships are not about manipulating people, collecting influential names, or turning every conversation into a calculated exchange. They are about becoming intentional with whom you invite into your world, how you communicate with them, what you contribute, what you tolerate, what you nurture, and ultimately who you become through the people you choose to know. Your relationships are not merely surrounding your life, they are helping shape it. Some will challenge you, some will comfort you, some will introduce you to worlds you never knew existed, others will teach you what you should never accept again. Some will stay for decades, others will remain only long enough to leave behind a lesson. Receive each with discernment, then take responsibility for the relationships that matter. Reach out to someone you have been meaning to contact. Listen more carefully instead of preparing your next response. Offer value without immediately asking for something in return. Repair a relationship where pride has kept the distance alive. Thank a mentor whose influence you have never properly acknowledged. Encourage someone who may be quietly struggling. Start the conversation you have been postponing, and step beyond the familiar circle that has defined your thinking for too long. Do not wait until you need people to start caring about people. Build trust before the door appears. Your reputation will travel through rooms you have never entered. Your generosity may reach people you never meet. Your words may remain in someone's mind long after you have forgotten saying them. So become deliberate about the person you are becoming in the lives of others, because your greatest legacy may not be what you accomplish alone, but what becomes possible because you connected, contributed, listened, trusted, and cared. Choose your connections wisely, build them honestly, nurture them generously, and remember, your future is connected.